and warning against unbelief. 96, call to worship the Lord, the righteous judge. 98, call to praise the Lord for his righteousness. And then 99, praise the Lord for his fidelity to Israel. 99, the Lord reigns, let the peoples tremble. He is enthroned above the cherubim, and let the earth shake. The Lord is great in Zion. He is exalted above all the peoples. Let them praise thy great and awesome name. Holy is he. And the strength of the king loves justice. Thou hast established equity. Thou hast executed justice and righteousness in Jacob. Exalt the Lord our God, and worship at his footstool. Holy is he. Moses and Aaron were among his priests, and Samuel was among those who called on his name. They called upon the Lord. He answered them. He spoke to them in the pillar of cloud. They kept his testimonies, the statutes that he gave them. O Lord our God, thou didst answer them. Thou wast a forgiving God to them, yet an avenger of their evil deeds. Exalt the Lord our God, and worship at his holy hill, for holy is the Lord our God. So these are types of psalms, and again, some can fit several different types. There's different elements within it, but that kind of helps you get an understanding of what it's about. What is the purpose of this psalm? You read through the psalm, you try and figure out what's the thrust, what's its purpose. That helps you then reflect more and meditate on it better. All right, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll go to a little more technical stuff. eaten any of it yet?
Back online.
Too hot? That's a lot of bread for a little girl.
I think Mommy cut it.
What?
I think Mommy cut it.
Maybe.
But if you even just
Maybe
a
Daddy
third of
did.
it, I would be impressed.
Maybe Daddy.
Especially after you microwave it and rubberize it.
Yeah, I got a little rubbery. Still pretty good though. Oh, microwave anything at school. What?
Sliders.
You want sliders?
She made, tomorrow we're having like a going away potluck thing for one of the loadmasters that's transferring to Charlotte. And so she made shredded chicken pesto mozzarella sliders.
Sounds pretty fancy.
Really good.
Really
Ingredients, throw it on the bread, put it in the oven for 10
Well, it
minutes.
sounds like so fancy, it should be called a slider.
Yeah.
It has to have a different name. When the slider's like, that
Finger
sounds...
ten,
Is there a French word for finger sandwiches? And that doesn't sound like it should.
The slid down the
You
throat
know,
though.
Right, just go for French, come on. Come up with something. What would you call it in French?
Sandwich.
Sandwiches?
My brain is shutting off at 8 p.m. and it does not think in French.
Well, then we'll talk about some Hebrew.
That's easier.
That's better.
That's a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
We'll spit instead. Cough. Yeah, it was not skill. We gotta wait for Jim to come back. So it's pull-apart bread. I guess most breads pull apart if you yank hard enough.
It's funny, I this past semester I had 2 students in my class that were fluent in French. It's hard because I gotta teach a lot of French terms. And so I don't even want to attempt it in front of them because, you know, I can kind of pronounce it okay. But, I mean, it's just, I defer to them.
Here's the American Hawaiian version.
There you go.
Aloha
Yeah,
escargot.
so you're hearing French from a Japanese guy from Hawaii. Go figure.
That's probably still better than the guy from the deep south. Escargot!
Yeah.
Let's target.
S. Yeah, I was joking that one. Remember the, well, if you're old enough, remember the K cars?
The what?
K cars. K cars. You remember K cars?
Yeah. K cars. Yeah, the Reliant K
The
cars.
Reliant was one of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, the K cars.
Oh,
So there's one
Reliant
about
K, I've
S
heard
cars. Escargot. K car don't.
They were Dodges, right?
Yeah. There was
That was a long
Dodges.
time ago.
Yeah.
Plymouth.
The 70s?
Plymouth K cars, right?
Oh, I think, yeah, they were Plymouth. Yeah, they were Plymouth.
I think the 70s.
Daddy.
I think about the early 70s.
We're on, you know that?
All right, so. We were on that whole time, we talked about escargot.
I'm gonna edit that out.
We gotta edit that out.
I'm gonna delete
That was all on there.
All right, Maskell, contemplative poem. This is actually not that difficult. At the heading of many psalms, there's all these terms. We don't even know what all the terms mean. Some we've kind of figured out, but you'll see them, and so just these are some of them. So there's Maskell, there's 13 of those, and it's right at the heading. For example, we look at Psalm 32, so the first one. So you see we're at the heading, a Psalm of David, a Maskell. All right, so if you have an NAS, it has a footnoting, possibly contemplative or didactic or skillful psalm, because we're not quite sure what exactly some of these terms mean. So by examining them, then they come up with some ideas. So a contemplative poem of some sort. Next one is Miktam, spelled different ways. You all pronounce that Miktam. It's a musical liturgical title term entitles of Psalms 16 and 56 through 60. And the only thing we can really is that all those psalms seem to be poems of lament, so maybe it has something to do with that. Might be a reference to that. Or it could be a musical notation that goes with that. That's the only thing we can kind of get, but that occurs in those particular ones. So you can see it there in Psalm 16. The Lord in the Psalms portion life, deliverance, death, and mikvah. Sometimes my dramatic poem, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to fit. It's not really pithy, which is kind of what epimag means, pithy sayings and stuff, but they all have something to do with lamenting. Another term that pops up, Psalm 30 is one's got that. Here's a song at the dedication of a house, a Psalm of David. It's usually translated as the word song, so you may not see the Hebrew there, but it's mizmor. That's used in 57 introductions, translated from a word that has a root meaning to make or produce music in praise of God. And so quite a few examples of that. So these are praises to God in song. So nothing to be worried about. Selah. Okay, it's some sort of musical pause, some sort of musical interlude or a crescendo. The root meaning of the word comes from something that means to lift up, hence why they probably think maybe crescendo. But it's some kind of musical term. That's why we usually, when we're reading through it, we'll go ahead and say it because it causes you to pause. So it's used 71 times, and it's not usually in the stanzas. All right, ashir is also a word that's translated as song and titles. And then also within text, also is music, sing, singers, depending on the particular text that pops up. Then tefillah, prayer, used in several psalms, 17, 86, 90, 102, and 142, and then in Psalm 72:20. So the other time it's always at the beginning. It's a prayer of, example, something back here, 17. Introduces as a prayer of David. 86. Introduced a prayer of David. 90 is introduced a prayer of Moses, the man of God. So it's just, it demonstrates that kind of nature to it. Then Psalm 72:20 occurs actually in the middle of the song. Or the end of it. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. That's into book 2. Book 3 starts Psalm 73. So it's just referring to that. Used 5 times. And then Tehillah means praise. It's used in Psalm 145. All right, so those are just some ideas of the particular terms that are used, so you have some idea of what was talked about. Let me go back and just talk about that more. A lot of these terms, we just don't know what they mean because Hebrew was not an active language for so long. It was written, and then modern Hebrew doesn't pick up the same terms the same way. Any language that's being used is going to keep changing from where it had been. There's a whole lot of grammar and word usage I remember as a kid just not used anymore, or it has a completely different meaning. Hence, you can see over centuries, we kind of have an idea of maybe what it means, but we're kind of guessing. Well, there is work being done on it. Maybe they're coming up with some more. I've heard some and seen some things where people are saying they've come up with a better idea of what some of these things were and are trying to recreate it. I'm not exactly sure how they're doing it. But I'm not that much into poetry. that I'm studying it in that manner. I just enjoy it. All right, let's talk a little bit about Hebrew poetry. This is important not just for the Psalms, but the other poetical books, and then poetry that pops up in narratives as well. First of all, there's not a lot of agreement on how meter is used within Hebrew poetry. We tend to have particular structure within a lot of English poetry and other language poetry. So many syllables and then a repeat and structure to it. That is not quite sure. Now, the importance of meter exegetically, nothing. It doesn't matter. That would be just termed how you would say it and getting a rhythm of it. It is talked about a lot in textual criticism, but that's the only place you're going to find something. All right? How well can they read the poem? Okay, grammatical issues. You got to remember that poetry differs a lot from prose. For example, articles, conjunctions, the word and the sign of the direct object, a lot of times are just missing. It's just, but you see that in any like English poetry. A lot of times it's just missing. Why? Because to get the meter and the rhythm right, you got to leave something out to get your flow. But it's assumed from the context, so it just may not have it. So you just go from that. So that's, again, you have to keep that in mind when you're exegeting something. It is poetry. Okay, structure of Hebrew poetry, though, is generally parallel in nature and usually in couplets, A and B, sometimes triplets A, B, and C, and we'll see some examples of that. In fact, Hebrew poetry is much more structured on a mental basis than a meter rhythm basis. It's parallel thought more than anything else. At least that seems to be the structure. We don't necessarily do that as much in English poetry. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but that's what seems to be more significant, is this parallelism of thought. Okay, now a strophe is equivalent to a paragraph in prose. In the music, you might call it a stanza if you're doing musical notation, but that's what we're talking about. And usually it's going to be indicated by several things. One is the use of refrain, like Psalm 46, 7, 11, both the Lord of the host is with us. So there's a repetition, so you can break it apart. Or what I did with Psalm 42, 43, there's a refrain 3 times, so it breaks up into 3 sections. Psalm 136 is one that's classically known because of the repetition within it. Makes it easy to see. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His loving kindness is everlasting. Give thanks to the God of gods. His lovingness is everlasting. And so you keep repeating that. And that could have been done musically with something, well, kind of like we'll read it sometimes, responsive reading. One person says it, the other repeats it. But you can imagine a choir doing this. So there might be a soloist, or one part of the choir is saying this, and then the choir breaks out behind it, you know, the rest of it. You know, for his loving kindness everlasting and be majestic. And he's this, and bang, here's the rest of it. So that would also break off these strophes. The use of the term Selah, another way that can break things up into these sections, with that pause, musical interlude, crescendo, whatever it is. Acrostics. Of course, we're going to miss that since you're not Hebrew speakers. But there's a lot of acrostics used within these psalms. Makes sense. What's an easy way to memorize things? Make an acrostic out of it. Sometimes it's the alphabet. Psalm 119 is probably the best example of that. Each section is begins with a different Hebrew letter, all the way through the whole alphabet. But several others do the same thing, and it breaks it off. Okay, and then there's chiastic. It's a crossover sequencing of thought. Very common in Hebrew poetry is thought A, thought B, thought B, thought A, or it could get more complex. Thought A, thought B, thought C, thought C, thought A, thought B, thought A. So it forms
Pattern?
well, it's the Hebrew what's the Hebrew what? Forgetting it. It's not good. It's a Hebrew letter that looks inverted like that, so it's, you go one way and then over, so bum, 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 bum. So, we'll see some examples. Okay, now there can be grammatical parallelism. We're probably more used to this in English. You have subject, verb, object, and subject, verb, object. In a lot of other languages, you can mix those things around quite a bit. But that's parallelism. And when you write it out, it's easy to see. We'll see some examples of this. But there's also synonymous parallel thoughts that have the same or similar meaning. And let me give you a couple examples. The first one is going to be Proverbs 17:4. So the first line, so an evildoer, there's a subject, listens to, there's the verb, and then object, wicked lips. The second line then, a liar, subject, pays attention to, a destructive tongue. Now this one is a parallel thought, but we also see the parallelism in the structure. But they both have the same essence of meaning, right? An evildoer, a liar. Okay, liars are evildoers. One's listening to, one's paying attention to, just a different way of saying really the same thing. And then what happens, wicked lips are destructive lips. So it's an expansion on this thought. So that becomes more expressive. Then there's the antithetic structure as well. So instead of paralleling with the same thought, it's a contrast from the first line to the second line. The couplets themselves contrast. Let me give you some examples of that. First one's Proverbs 15:2. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. The contrast, sometimes the structure will have a conjunction of contrast, but sometimes it won't. But you'll still pick it up because you can see its concepts are opposite each other. Tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. Mouth of fools spouts folly. So, contrast. Wise or a fool, verbs are similar. One is making something, the other one is erupting, spouting. One is knowledge, acceptable knowledge, the other one is just folly. So, contrasting concepts. Another example of this, Isaiah 1:3, an ox knows its owner, a donkey its master's manger.